Welcome, everyone. My mom today is joining us for our Sabbath study. We are the Awakened by Yahuwah Assembly in Yahuwah Almighty and Yahushua Messiah. My sister Shoshana is here next to us, and below us is my brother Dennis. Let me fix his name for him. Sorry about that.
You gotta love technology. You gotta love it.
All right, just quick. All right, so he's here with us via phone, so that's why you don't see him.
Good.
All right, so we're gonna go to the study today. Is gonna be about where are we now in end times Bible prophecy, or for simplicity, where are we right now in Bible prophecy? So first, we're going to start with the beginning of the birth pains, and I will be, for simplicity's sake, I will be reading from the Restored Name King James, because it actually has some of the stuff restored here. Let's see here, so Matthew 24. We're going to start at, I believe, let me just make sure I got it right. I think it's verse 3 we're going to start at. It says, signs of the end of the age, the header here on each sword. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came up to him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the world? So they're asking him three different things. Now, the first thing I think that is vaguely being referenced, the sign of these things, that I believe is talking about the destruction of 70 AD and all that. So there's like three different things Yahushua is going to actually get into with this chapter. And Yahushua answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceives you. And let me go to the next verse here. For many shall come in my name. Okay. So I just want to make a reference here, because we get into the Hebrew roots stuff and we're like, okay, well, no one has claimed the name Yahushua yet. Well, you got to understand the Greek word for name here is also referring to authority and character. Okay. So many have claimed to be serving the Messiah. You can take this multiple different ways, actually, this verse. That many have claimed that he is the Messiah and has been a false prophet, like Joel Osteen. He'll say that he's serving the Messiah of the scriptures, but he's a false prophet. T.D. Jakes and tons of others. And there was this one Latin guy that claimed to be JC. You know, he actually claimed to be like a reincarnation of Jesus Christ, and he made his servants get a tattoo of 666 on their ankles. So, I mean, this has been happening. So this.
How about those, Doug, who don't claim that they are Messiah, but claim that Messiah is who he says he is, and yet deceive many?
Yep, that's exactly that's what I was trying to say, but I was stepping over my words. Thank you. That's the other interpretation that I was getting at, that you just said, that basically they claim that he is the true Messiah, but they're still deceiving many because they're false prophets and they're wolves in sheep's clothing. And many of these Christian, evangelists and televangelists, all these, big guys like, the guys that are on the CBN network, and all these TV preachers are preaching, a false basora. They're preaching a curse. So that's what Shoshana was talking about, that there's even those that might not claim to be Yahushua, but claim that he is the Messiah and that they're servants of his, but they deny him with their works.
Right.
And so there's two different ways that people can take verse 5. That's the point. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. And this is where I really want to drive home. Most translations translate this word here wrong. Okay? It's actually supposed to be ethnos from the Greek, ethnicity. And actually there is one translation that does this correctly, and it's called the Orthodox Jewish Bible. And it says, for there shall, and let me I'm going to have to jump back and forth because there's a lot of Masoretic Hebrew there. For ethnic group shall rise against ethnic group, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So the Orthodox Jewish Bible, instead of in English having nation, it will say ethnic group. So that's the point I was trying to make. And that's what the Greek word ethnos means, not a physical country. So earthquakes in diverse places, that's been happening.
Oh, yes.
We had an earthquake up here not too long ago where I live, like 5-6 years ago in Milltown. That was that huge big earthquake that actually cracked in the pavement.
Yeah.
So that's been happening lately.
Oh, sure.
And so we're going to go to the next verse here that says, all these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all ethnos, all ethnic groups, for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another. And this is, I believe, where we're at right now. We're at the point where you're going to see, verse 9 and 10, I think, is exactly where we are in prophecy for right now. That's my theory. We are at the part where we're going to start seeing more and more of this, even though ISIS is kind of partially fulfilling this with killing a lot of Christians, beheading them. You're going to see more of this with us, our people in our walk, that in the full belief of the scriptures, that people are going to hate us just for believing in Yahusha, that a lot of people will be killed that have to endure in the tribulation, that don't get to be counted worthy. So
now, may I suggest that the fifth seal has only maybe been cracked open. It's not fully open yet, because when it is fully opened, everybody that doesn't worship the beast is going to be beheaded, and the decree will go out that you die if you don't worship the beast. That'll be the fullest extent of that fifth seal. And we're not there yet, but I think it has been cracked.
yeah, I agree 100%. It definitely hasn't been fully fulfilled. There's many things in the fifth seal that have not happened yet. So I agree with Sister Shoshana definitely on that. Verse 10 says, and then shall many be offended, so many people are getting offended, easily offended generation.
Gosh.
So
that's right.
Oh, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. Stuff like that in our society. So, I mean, this is happening right now, verse 10 here.
Oh, yeah.
So, and shall betray one another. You're seeing more of this with families betraying one another, people that don't want to go to the full belief of the scriptures, people like me that maybe have a family member that doesn't understand what we believe and constantly attacking us, calling us Pharisees, calling us legalists. So you're seeing more and more of people portraying one another, even, people that proclaim to be believers in the Messiah. Some get called into this walk and some stay in Christianity. And the ones in Christianity usually are the ones attacking us. So that's what I believe shall betray one another could be happening right now. And even people you think that are your friends will betray you.
Oh, yeah.
Once they find out what you believe.
Oh, yeah.
So verse 11 says, and many false prophets shall rise and deceive many, which over time has been happening a lot, but it's escalating more. More and more false prophets in modern day right now are happening, especially on social media, in my opinion.
I'm so glad I'm not on any of that stuff.
Yeah, if I could go back. And because lawlessness, and let me change here, the King James says iniquity, but if you go to the Complete Apostles Bible here, it says, and because lawlessness will increase, the love of many will grow cold. So more of that's happening. JC did away with the law at the cross. We don't have to keep the law anymore. The Ten Commandments are not valid. And who's that guy's name? Creflo Dollar, I think his name is. That one TV preacher that says that?
Really?
Yeah. An actual TV preacher actually said that on camera, to his congregation. Yeah, he put the law to the cross. And so, but he who endures to the end shall, for you Christians that are listening here, shall be saved. You are not saved because you made an altar call, okay? Even though that's not really part of this study, I just wanted to include that little verse there, that little tidbit. Shall be saved, okay? So it's future tense. So let's see. Now we're going to
We
go.
must endure to the end, whether it be our personal end or the end of the age. Endure. He calls us to endure.
Yep, hallelujah. And let's see here. The last part we have for this first part of the section is Mark 13, verse 8, which talks about what is the beginning of sorrows. So now we're going to really attack whether we're at the beginning of the sorrows, in the middle, or whether we're at the end of the sorrows. So this is why we're including this verse here. It says, for ethnic group will be raised up against ethnic group, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places. So honestly, the ethnic group against ethnic group, I can't think of any other time in history that it's been happening more and more and more. A couple of years ago, you had the Civil War in America, where you had the Caucasian cop, basically doing something to an African American. I forget the actual story, but it was on news everywhere, where you had basically, it was like Caucasians versus African Americans, basically. Civil war in our country. So
they have been trying to start another civil war in this country for several years, but it's not happening. The people are too smart. They're not going to let that happen. Realize.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know if everyone's smarter than that, because I've seen stuff from people that even are believers that, I'm sorry, they're saying stuff like they're worried about Black Lives Matter, this and that, in politics. So there are some people that are feeding into this, and I just want to bring that up, that this is partially being fulfilled, in my opinion, right now, Mark 13:8. The ethnos against ethnos is definitely happening. It might not be happening on a grand scale, but it's happening to the point where, the African American community is being sucked into this whole Black Lives Matter movement. They're being sucked into this whole ethnic war that's the leader trying to start. So in a way, it's being partially fulfilled. I think eventually it's going to get to a point where you have them, chaos. Basically all ethnic groups are going to be killing one another, kind of like martial law. Eventually it's going to
that's what they're hoping for. That's what the government's trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And especially those who call themselves Democrats. George Soros has been paying people to riot against Republicans and just create all kinds of chaos. And up until now, people have seen through it, and they understand that it's George Soros. Mainly because of people like us, YouTubers, who get on there and tell the truth. And a lot of these YouTubers are black YouTubers that tell the truth. And this is great because it helps to calm the ethnos down to the point where they realize where it's coming from. It's not coming from within the people or within our family groups or tribes. It's coming from outside. And outside meaning George Soros and whoever else is working for the Illuminati, trying to push it.
Yeah, I'm thankful for that. I mean, pretty much the majority of the people are not feeding into it, but unfortunately, you had a couple years ago the Sean Bell shooting. Constant stuff with the white police versus African Americans. They're constantly trying to push forth that agenda, and that's all I was trying to bring up. That's kind of a partial fulfillment with ethnicity versus ethnicity. Another one is Donald Trump being a Caucasian president trying to take the land from the Native Americans.
Yes.
Ethnos versus ethnos. So they're constantly trying to push forth that narrative. That's all I'm trying to say. Now we're going to go to the Doctrines of Demons / Perilous Times section of this study. This is going to deal with, are we seeing a little bit of a fulfillment of the perilous times and Doctrines of Demons? So we're first going to go to 2 Timothy chapter 2, I believe. Let me just make sure I'm correct on that. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 to 5. Okay, so, and it says here, unrighteousness in the last days. That's the header here for this chapter. But know this, that in the last days, perilous times shall come. For men will be lovers of themselves. You know, selfie sticks, you know. Lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, which constantly has been happening in the past couple of decades. This has been fulfilled more through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s than any other decade or times in history I could think of. So the past 30 years, it's been really, you know, amped up, that part. Unthankful, again, this time period, it's been a lot like that with the children. Unset apart, okay? So they're completely children that are probably raised in the way become like the world. That could be what that's referring to. That you have the Christian church, honestly, I hate to say it's very guilty in this. They don't teach the difference between the profane and the clean. And it's constantly, this is being fulfilled right now. They're set apart. Even people that would claim to be believers. So.
Yes, I can attest to that. I raised my son in the way he should go. And right around 17 or 18 years old, he just totally rebelled and decided he was going to live like the world because all of his friends did. And he's still on that road. I keep hoping and praying that he will turn around, because it says in Scripture that train up a child the way he should go, and he won't depart from it when he gets old. And that's in Proverbs, I believe. But these are the things that we have to deal with our children that our parents did not have to deal with us. We were quite obedient and pretty much did as we were told, and they didn't have those problems with us that we have with our children today. So that's just the problem of living in the end time, I guess.
Yeah. That's what makes it perilous times. And the next verse talks about unloving, having no love, having no charity, unforgiving, slanderers, people that, you know, backbite against one another and talk about someone behind their back.
Oh, that goes on at my job continually.
I'm not surprised though, because all of us have to work with people that are of the world. So I would not.
It's just at a prime right now. It's at an absolute prime. I am just so set apart from that. I literally go to my car on my break and am with my Father in the Scriptures, in prayer. I completely physically get myself away from all of this. It's made a huge difference. It is making a huge difference in my life.
Yeah.
This is another one too that I can say about my generation and Shoshana's son's generation. Without self-control, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Drunkardness, drugs, the type of music that people are listening to, the fact that people can't forgive my French, but can't keep it until marriage, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
that's a big issue. That's a big issue.
The generation that I've grown up in is complete. That defines my generation without self-control, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Brutal. Okay, brutal meaning, physical.
The difference is in our generation, we did save it for marriage, and we still messed up.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Right there.
Brutal. I think brutal here is referring to possibly violent, getting into a lot of fights or maybe attacking people, assaulting people, not loving what is to, meaning everything. And you can find this in the book of Isaiah, not loving what is to. Everything that is righteous has been turned and flipped on its head in society as corny. Square. You're square for wanting to be righteous. You're corny. You're a loser. Yada yada. Okay. But if you want to commit sexual immorality and give in to your flesh, that guy's cool.
You get a cheer for that. You get a cheer.
The girls. He's a player.
Yeah.
While he's whoring himself and shaming his creator, these people are, would say, he's really cool for doing all that. So you can find that in the book of Isaiah. I think it's chapter 5, verse 20, if I'm not mistaken, where it says, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil." So that's where we get this in the end times. So basically that's being fulfilled right now. Then it says in verse 4, traitors, okay, like again, backstabbing people, betraying people that, you would call your friends or, like a brother, like a sister, like a very close friend. Headstrong. So headstrong is probably referring to pride again, not having an ear to hear, having been puffed up, prideful again. Lovers of pleasure. Now this is big on my generation. Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of Yahuwah. Ain't that the truth?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm gonna party tonight. Yeah, I don't need the Bible. And that's what my whole generation is like. And the generation after me that's growing up right now, that's been, the mid-90s, people that have been born in the mid-90s and close to the 2000s. This newer generation is even getting worse like that.
And that coincides with the scripture that I just got done reading in the Gospel of Matthew about he who is willing to lose his whole soul to gain the world. Mm-hmm. And I was just reading that just the other night.
Matthew 16:26.
Yes, I was just in there. And that's basically what you're talking about. People willing to lose their souls.
Yep, and if you want to check more about that, you can look up my channel. We just did a study about that last Sabbath, about listening to secular music, and the majority of mainstream music artists, they have
getting drunk, just all of it. Sex,
drugs,
you name it.
The gangster lifestyle,
Yep.
Violence.
The here and now. Who cares about what's to come? It's not real to them.
And I think this is more of a tricky verse here to figure out what he's referring to. It says having a form of righteousness, but denying its power. Mm-hmm. And from these people turn away. Now this reminds me of religions that reject Yahusha or reject the Father, that it seems like they have a form of purity, but they deny who would buy them, who bought them with a price. So they deny the person that the power comes from to become pure, to turn away from sin. So you got Islam, the example. Mm-hmm. They deny the power. They deny who it's coming from. Yeah, there's a lot of people I've seen a lot of people that I knew in high school. Mm-hmm. They used to be drug they used to be addicted to drugs and drunkards and all this, and then they turn to Islam and they clean up their life.
Mm.
But are they giving esteem to the true Creator? No.
No.
They're just doing it for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Or for worse, for somebody like Islam, Allah, for somebody like that who is not their creator.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's what I think 2 Timothy 3:5 could be referring to. Any belief system that someone has that has it looks like righteousness, but it denies the power that righteousness comes from. So, and that's the end of that. Let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. We're going to start. Actually, let me make sure I got that right here. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 to 5.
Okay.
It says, I charge you therefore before Yahuwah and the Master Yahushua Messiah, who is going to rightly rule the living and the dead in accordance with his appearing and his kingdom. Preach the word, be ready. Oh, hold on. Am I in the right one? Oh, no,
I'm where you are.
My bad. My bad. It's 1 Timothy. My bad. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, 1 Timothy.
Sorry, audience. Sorry about that. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. This is where I wanted to get to. Now we're with the doctrine of demons part of this study. So how the latter times talk about the Spirit. So chapter 4, verse 1 of 1 Timothy says, but the Spirit explicitly says that in latter times, meaning the end times, some shall fall away from the belief, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies and hypocrisy, meaning they're...
So where are you again, Doug?
Chapter 4, verse 1 of 1 Timothy. Yeah, 1 Timothy.
1 Timothy?
Yeah, chapter 4, verse 1.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm in 2 Timothy.
Yeah, my bad
Me
about that.
too. That's okay.
My bad about that. I misspoke before.
Okay.
Yeah, it says in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1, but the Spirit explicitly says that in latter times some shall fall away from the belief, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, speaking lies and hypocrisy, like being hypocrites. So they're lying and they're being hypocrites. So maybe they'll judge you and falsely accuse you of sinning, yet they're being a sinner, being a hypocrite. Having been seared with a hot iron. Yep, go ahead.
We've seen a lot of these people, or wolves in sheep's clothing, that will enter a group of assembly of true believers and try to destroy the group by introducing doubt in what they believe, and then introducing whole different doctrines. For instance, there's the lunar Sabbath doctrine that they were introducing. They still are, and that is a false doctrine. Another false doctrine they've been trying to introduce, and the person that started it was Matthew Nolan, who tried to break the law and the covenant up into two separate things. And they're not separate, because the covenant is what we promise Yahuwah. That's our part of the law. He gives the law, we obey it. That is what a covenant is. And he gives us baraka because we obey him. And this man wants to remove the whole equation. And it's sad that people will go along with such things as this. And then you have people who don't know when the day starts. I've heard so many people talk about, oh, the day starts in the morning, it can't start at evening. Well, in Leviticus 23, where it's talking about specifically keeping the Day of Atonement, it says, you shall keep your feast, it's a fast, keep your fast from sunset to sunset. And the way you can know that all days begin at sunset, they don't begin in the morning, You can look at Genesis 1:1 and just read it right down the line. And the first day was the evening and the morning. The second day was the evening and the morning. Every day began at sunset. So these are things that we just like for you to be aware of that have crept in to the assemblies. And I'm sure there's more. Doug, if you can think of any, or Dennis or anyone, feel free.
Yeah, there's other doctrines. I mean, right now I'm probably going to focus on, there's actually specific doctrines that Paul's actually talking about here that I want to focus on, that he actually is warning us about here in 1 Timothy 4, where we left off at, I think, verse 4 or 5. It says, or verse 3, it starts to say, forbidding to marry. Catholic Church, forbidding to marry. Commanding to abstain from meats, and I want to bring this up for any Christians that are watching. This does not mean all meats, okay? It's saying from meats which Yahuwah has created to be received. So meats that he created, animals he created to be eaten, not the ones he created that were unclean. So he's talking about cows, chicken, turkey. So there's been doctrines out there by the Gnostics,
Lamb,
that anything that's clean, even clean animals, it's a sin. That you have to be a vegetarian to enter the kingdom. That's what Gnostic Christians will tell you. Okay, so Gnosticism has creeped into Seventh-day Adventism. I've heard some Seventh-day Adventists, talk about that you have to go back to the original diet of Genesis to be in the kingdom. So Gnosticism has taught both of those. Forbidding to marry, I think, actually came from Gnostics too before the Vatican. So this is what Paul specifically is talking about in this chapter. And then it says, for every creature of you who is tube and nothing to be refused. A lot of people take that the wrong way. If it be received with thanksgiving, meaning you can just pray over it. That's what they'll say. But then if you read the next verse, it says, for it is set apart by the word. What's the word? His law. It is set apart by his law, the word of Yahuwah, and prayer. So you can't just pray over an unclean thing, you're not going to get sick. Let me just pray over this swine. Just pray over it. So in verse 3, though, the actual original Greek word, if you want to look for the original Greek word for meats, it's broma, which means meats that were set apart according to the Levitical law. Okay, so Paul's talking about a specific type of animal. He's not talking about every animal.
That's what people used to say if it dropped on the floor. Kiss it up to God. Kiss it up to God.
If says that to me, I'm going to have to slap them. Where kiss it up. Falls on the floor. What do they believe in, a 3-second rule?
Yeah, that was a Rod thing.
All right, so anyway, let's go here. We got one last cross-reference here, and we're running out of time for this portion, so we'll have to do a part 2 for this, but at least we're halfway through, so we're not doing too bad on time. Okay. Luke chapter 12, verse 51 to 53. This is going to deal with, let me turn to it here. Luke chapter 12, verses 51 to 53. Okay, it says, and let me use a different version of King James. It gets weird in that verse. Do you think that I came to give peace on earth? I tell you, not at all, but rather division. But now on, 5 in one house will be divided. Wow, that's pretty specific.
Wow.
3 against 2 and 2 against 3. So the complete Apostle Bible.
I never.
They make it very specific. They use the Byzantine majority text, Greek New Testament. Father will be divided against a son against the father, a mother against a daughter, and a daughter against a mother, and a mother-in-law against a daughter-in-law, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. So Yahusha's letting you know that this is going to happen. And obviously, I don't think it was happening when he was saying it. In 12, we don't have any proof of that. So I would think this is actually for our time too, the end times. So in my opinion, this is happening right now. My family, my mom is the only one in my family that actually accepted this truth. Okay, my own dad and I have been divided. So I experienced it firsthand of this being fulfilled in our time right now. So Luke chapter 12 verses 51 to 53 is another way to know where exactly we are. So I believe so far you can see that we're at least at the minimum, we're halfway through the beginning of birth pains, if not practically at the end of them. And so the next portion we will be doing when we come back on will be the abomination of desolation, which is the next stage in end times prophecy. So we will be getting into, once the sorrows are done, once the birth pains are done, and the abomination of desolation is set up, what is going to happen there, and what is the abomination of desolation, and who sets it up. So we're going to be getting into that, and please stay tuned. We'll also be using extra biblical source of the ascension of Isaiah. So please stay tuned. It's going to be an interesting one. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back very soon. Shalom. And let me unmute Ellie. There we go. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back very shortly. And if you have any questions, you can contact me or my sister Shoshana. We're on Facebook, YouTube. Her YouTube account is Shoshana Rogers. Mine is Boninscgna on YouTube. So you can find our videos on either channel. And please, you could comment on the comment section or reach out to us on Facebook for thelostsheep.com. Our group page on Facebook, Awakened by Yahuwah Assembly in Yahuwah Almighty Yahushua Messiah. So if you're a believer looking for fellowship, please contact us.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.
Thank you. Shalom.
Shalom.